David was profoundly promiscuous. Profoundly promiscuous. He made friends wherever he went. He made friends in cafes and restaurants, waiting in lines. I think his favorite day of the year was the day that Carnegie Hall subscribers could exchange their tickets because they had to camp out online for hours. And for David, this was just a great social event. Like a pond stocked with all these interesting music-loving fish. Once we agreed to meet before a concert on the sidewalk in front of Carnegie Hall, and I said to him, do not talk to anyone before I get there. Didn't want to go to the concert with, a new friend of David's. Life, as much as David did, but sadly, that doesn't seem to be the case. He taught me more than anyone I've ever known about enjoyment, and not just tolerating, but savoring variations. I want to tell you one story because it brings back, for me, the fun of being with David, and also the way that his reality sometimes didn't quite mesh with the reality of other people. Back in the 70s, we traveled together a lot. And at one moment when the dollar was particularly strong against the lira, we stayed at the Gritti in Venice. At that time, David was playing the role of Lytton Strachey and had cast me as Virginia Woolf. And it was all shawls and scarves and long hidden skirts and stuff like that. And it really, we had a fabulous room on the Grand Canal. It could have been 1925. But beneath it, we had a very strict bookkeeping system. We split expenses 50-50, absolutely. And here, I must remind you that, or perhaps inform you, that David considered it incredibly bad manners to talk about money with any but his most intimate friends. Whereas, of course, it was always in good taste and appropriate to talk about sex. So this money thing was a deep bond between us that we could split the expenses, and he had worked up a balance. So it came to me to pay the hotel bill, which I did in traveler's checks, which was what we used then. But the Gritti management did not quite understand. It was too unorthodox an arrangement that a room booked in the name of Mr. Schorr would be paid for with checks by Mrs. Gross. But from our point of view, everything was fine, and we swanned our way out with our shawls and our scarves and our skirts, and the porter carrying our baggage down to the Vaporetto, very Lytton in Virginia, and the hotel sent somebody after us shouting, "Stop thief!" Loudly. There are many conspiracy theories about David's death. It came to me in a dream that he was pretending to be dead to escape the IRS. Some people think that he's pretending to be dead so that they will clean his apartment. Some people at Wesleyan think that he's found a new way to prolong his sabbatical, and that he will come back when he's good and ready. And of course, if one of those turns out to be true, I'll be ecstatic. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Friends of David. I've been asked to read a poem by Phyllis, an elegy for the poet's brother that had great significance and resonance for David, and I understand that Sarah read it at Wesleyan. Anne Carson has published a searching anatomy of this great poem, a book she calls Knox, which I recommend to you. It came into being in the wake of her brother's death. In it she says, Catullus wrote poem 101 for his brother who died in the Troad, the peninsula in northwestern Asia Minor where Troy is. Nothing at all is known of the brother except his death. Catullus appears to have traveled from Verona to Asia Minor to stand at the grave. Perhaps he recited the elegy there. Carson goes on to say that nothing in English can capture the passionate, slow surface of Roman elegy. No one, even in Latin, can approximate Catullan diction, which, at its most sorrowful, has an air of deep festivity. Like one of those trees that turns all of its leaves over silver into the wind. I never arrived at the translation I would have liked to do of Poem 101, she says, but over the years of working on it, I came to think of translating as a room, not exactly an unknown room, where one gropes for the light switch. I guess it never ends. A brother never ends. I prowl him. He does not end. David was reading this poem deeply, studying it with friends, trying to absorb its nuances as he struggled with the terrible loss of his brother Mark. As Phyllis told me, it became his mantra in his final year when he was doing the portraits of bark and calligraphy. He wrote the poem over and over. I want to read this poem now as we in turn struggle to accept our brother's passing. This is my own far from perfect attempt as it stands today to make a version of Catullus 101. Having crossed many lands and many seas, I've come here for this sorry ceremony, brother, to offer you my last respects and speak, though without hope, to your mute ashes, since fate has taken you yourself from me. Alas, poor brother, wrongly torn from me. Even so, accept these funeral gifts now, the offering of long family tradition, sad tribute, wet with a brother's flowing tears, and forever, brother, hail and farewell. I've been asked also to introduce the musicians who are about to play for you. They're all members of David's beloved Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. Benjamin Bowman is the violinist and concertmaster of the orchestra. Joel Noyes, cellist, and Brian Wagborn is the pianist. Thanks.
David is such an integral part of the fabric of my life that it's hard to identify the very first threads. But surely one of them is this piece, the Schubert Andante con moto. I know that we met 40 years ago when I was the advertising director for Harper & Row, and my boss's boss suggested that I hire David to create writers' portraits for a series of ads that we were running in the New Yorker. But when did he become indispensable? We were both pretty young, pretty fabulous. And I not only fell in love with David's art, but also soon with David himself. He was so funny, so self-assured, so smart, so openly and joyously gay. Who could resist him? Once we discovered our mutual passion for music, David, ever the teacher, was in his element. We followed the Beaux-Arts trio, who made the Schubert a regular feature of their repertoire. But when I asked David to teach me about opera, he truly came into his element. Other people might start with the easy operas, maybe the Magic Flute or La Boheme, but not David. He signed us up for the German series that year. And we plunged right in. It was a hard place to start, and the Frau on a Schatten nearly killed me. But that bitter pill was sweetened by Fidelia. I can still remember David's face as he told me how the Prisoners' Chorus rang out across Europe at the end of World War II, forever cementing its place in history and in my heart. Over the years, we had an astonishing musical voyage together. But we could go low together, too. When I got my first Mac, he insisted that I bring it over and tether it to his computer so he could share music. Oh, there was plenty of highbrow stuff to download, but also the Schorrs, Laura Nero, Surf City, and that recurring theme today, Daydream Believer. In February, I got a text in the middle of the night. It was David writing from Tel Aviv to ask if I wanted to go with him to Parsifal. I had just met Renee Papa when we both ducked out of a dinner party to go have a smoke. So of course I wanted to go to Parsifal, all 6 hours of it. David packed a picnic dinner for us, including napkins and dessert. Standards are standards. And we had a glorious evening. I kissed him goodnight, and with the tip of his hat, he was gone. He was leaving for Bologna the next week. I always thought I would see him again.
Good evening. Apologies for my English. David used to say that I've learned it in India. Lazy, big eater, tight with his money, but not with his art. David was someone who had the luck to show immediately in your face what his flaws were. So once you had dealt with his brilliant personality, and once you realized that you could cope with it, you knew that your friendship could last forever. I named this trait I liked best, Joining the Elephant, as described in the Amistad Mopin's book, The Night Listener. For those who have not read it, the middle-class parents of an American guy who married an Indian aristocrat, in order to impress friends and neighbors, tell the story of the wedding, adding each time invented extraordinary details, like the fact that the newlywed had marched seated on an elephant covered in jewels. I'm sure that all of us have been victims and or the amused audience of some of David hilarious elephant jewel stories. In my case, his favorite story was how we met. I was introduced to him at a party in Rome back in the summer of 1981. Here he was, this very fascinating American professor with long hair, but thanks God at that time no ponytail. Once the party was over, I followed him home, pretending to bump into him just by chance. Of course he noticed me, and this was my curse. How the evening ended, it's easy to imagine. I was 25. In the following years, he told this story to everyone I've introduced him to, including few boyfriends, adding each time new embarrassing details. His exaggerations were forgiven because his tales were always entertaining and his sense of humor irresistible. We managed to nourish our transatlantic friendship for all those years. It was easy to become part of each other's world. I would never be grateful enough for having introduced me, among others, to Amy and Andrew Bernstein, Stephen Ross, Richard Woodwinkle, Robert Adler, Ventura Pons, Jonathan Galassi, Burns and Earl, and to have inherited people like Douglas, Lou, and Phyllis. He was loved by my mother, by my ex-wife, by my friends. But mine and Ricardo's children were charmed by this eclectic professor who has drank more coke than they could ever imagine. Of all of us, I was probably the last one to spend some quality time with him in Naples. We adored the artisan shops in the old part of town, and I remember him having a very long conversation in his picturesque Italian, which was much worse than my English, with a printer who was greatly impressed by his passion and competence. We had planned to go back to Naples on April the 25th with Lou. Instead, the last time we spoke, he was in the intensive care unit during this short period of recovery. At first, he did not recognize me. Then he said, Fabrizio is you. I always wanted to fix you up with your Capone. But then he met Francesco. I found this very touching, very David, who was a great friend and a great connector, which is why we are all here tonight, remembering him with immense love. Now, my short tribute should have last year, but last week, while I was putting some things in order, I found a letter that David had sent me by fax in June the 13th of 1990. And the letter ended with few words by Vikram Seth, and I thought it was kind of a sign of destiny that I had to read them tonight. All of you who sleep tonight far from the ones you love, no hands to left or right and emptiness above. Know that you're not alone. The whole world shares your tears, some for tonight or one, and some for all the years.
Hi, for those who don't know me, I'm Amy. I was David's student at Weston in the early 1970s. In Italy in the 1980s, through David, I, the stupid American girl, met people who are still some of my closest friends in the world. Through David, I met Steve, my partner in crime for over 20 years. David did that. He brought people together. David lived on West 86th Street. I lived on West 89th. As it's clear to everybody, David had a wide circle of friends. He sometimes reached out, a polite term, for his friends for support. I was his preferred airport limousine service, his tech support, translator of social media abbreviations, the one who paid his bills on his too many to count sabbaticals. Steve described me as the person that David called to know whether to Q-tip his left ear or his right ear. Today is a day to remember David. We all remember his jokes and his stories. He could devilishly spin tales with the best of them. I have two to add to the mix today. Number one, I'm not sure it was a well-known fact, but David was a rabid Harry Potter fan. A new Harry Potter book, that was a big event. Not only the man of great discipline, he would savor each new book by only reading one chapter a day. Our ritual to purchase the newest volume, we would stand in line at Barnes & Noble when it would be released at midnight. One year, he knew he'd be in Germany when a new one was released. Uh-oh. A problem to be solved for Professor Schorr. Here's a Deathly Hallows. Dear Madam Sir, you may think this is a silly email, unless you have young children, then you may understand. I will be in your fair city of Munich in late July with my family, and my children are very concerned that they will be able to find a copy of the new Harry Potter novel in English on 21 July, when it's released. It seemed to me from your website that this was going to be so. I'm sorry, I don't speak German. Can you confirm this? And if so, can I reserve a copy? Thank you very much for your kind attention, David Schorr. 2. D. Schorr at Wesleyan.edu. Dear Mr. Schorr, thank you for your inquiry. As requested, we reserve the following title for you: Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Please collect your order at Marian Branch, etc., etc. Have a nice trip in Munich. Story number 2. This one is about David and his obsession with opera and Bayreuth, and seeing the ring cycle in that same summer of 2007 when he was in Germany. Tickets for this are famously impossible to get. It can take years. David had attended once in the past, and he was afraid that he might be on some internal Jews only get to go once list. So he devised a plan. He wrote on behalf of his opera-obsessed friend from India, Vishash, and his new bride, who would be traveling to Europe for the first time, with their dream of seeing the ring cycle performed live. Considerable correspondence back and forth with the box office in Germany, and the miracle happened. Vishash was to get a pair of tickets. One problem. Tickets at Bayreuth were not transferable. How was Professor Schorr going to pass for a young Indian man with a new wife by his side? Here is the email that David wrote and Vishash sent to Bayreuth. Dear Madam Sir, you granted me 2 seats for the ring operas this summer, and I am very grateful. Soon after receiving the tickets, my wife and I had further happy news, that she is expecting a child. Then a month or so ago, we learned that there's some risk with the pregnancy, and it was best for my wife not to travel. So I've given the tickets to my beloved teacher, Professor David from the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad. It is his 60th year, and that is a birthday which in India is traditionally celebrated by the son and nephews and students of all the 60-year-olds. So it was a nice opportunity to give a present to this man who has taught me so much. I am writing to tell you that the tickets are a gift. The kind lady I spoke to said this would be no problem. I'm also giving Professor Schorr your letter about the overpayment I made, not understanding your bank transfer system, and you may remit the balance to him, and he will bring it to me when he returns to India. I'm thanking you again for all of your kindness. Assuming all goes well, we will name the baby Sigmund or Sigmund. For the record, Vishesh was not married, there was no pregnancy, but David was 60. That's our David. Thanks, Schorr, you made things interesting.
Hello, everyone. I think I join all of you in finding it very difficult in speaking of David Schorr in the past tense. We knew each other as artists, and David was so unusual amongst artists because of his incredibly broad culture. The things that he knew about literature, the languages, and his depth of understanding of the other art forms is something that's very rare in a visual artist. And I know that he made the most of a great education, probably the kind that doesn't exist anymore. But I think his true education came when so many people in this room, from all walks of life, and he admired you so much and learned so much from you. And that's really what is the thing that informed his artistry, the great talent and the amazing technical ability that he had. It is appropriate that his breakthrough work was that series of portrait engravings. They are so vivid because of how he understood those writers and really brought them to life in those prints. And I think all of us can look back at those prints and see them on book covers. And really, those are the images of those writers that we remember. And it was really that great sense of humanity that informed his work. And certainly the remarkable paintings that he did in the 80s and 90s that really explored the human figure and the nude in a way that is very unusual. The only artist I can really compare him to is Rodin. And I think of Rodin's understanding that the human body could express almost every emotion, from deepest sorrow to great joy. And I feel that that's what David really believed about the human body in that work. And I think it's an incredible contribution. In that time when there was a resurgence of figurative art, David's work stands out as always so beautiful and correct, like Rodin, but never academic. And it was that humane touch, that humanity that carried through in the bodies of more recent work. He really brought, when we see the objects and goods, or those bottles with the text on them in apothecary, he always had that sense of these objects being handled or embodying some really essential feelings in the human psyche. And we see it in a very intense way in Flying Carpets, and certainly in the poems and portraits he did of his brothers, which really brings the whole thing back to the figure. David was such a generous person, and I think many people here will remember him so much as a world-class gift giver. For those of us who are lucky enough as artists to have him design books of our work, we will never have that experience again. He did such a beautiful job getting into what we did. And he was also just such a wonderful gift giver in giving us those, the other kinds of gifts. I mean, one time he gave me this incredible box of engraving purins. It was an antique box of engraving purins that he had found at a yard sale. Nobody could ever find a more perfect gift for me, and I think many of us have had that experience. And certainly he was so generous with those beautiful books that he did for his show. For his various shows, I strongly believe that those books are some of the most significant artist books ever done. They're great works in their design, their quality of the printmaking. If you ever were on press with him, with the printers, they loved him because he really knew how those presses worked, how the inks worked. A couple of times I was with him in his studio when he would just finish a painting, photograph it, and then he would go over to his computer and he would insert the image into his design for the book that would go with the show. And it would all come together, the image, the book, and the text he was going to put into it. And for David, that was the music of the spheres. He was very, very discriminating when it came to contemporary art, but he was also extremely open-minded about certain things. For David, there was no hierarchy between painting, printmaking, fine arts, design, illustration. And I do think he believed that those things, when done at the highest level, would always be great art. Now I mentioned gifts, and I really feel that there are gifts that we can give to David. I feel like those of us who are lucky enough to own his work should continue to enjoy it, but I hope ensure that it goes to other people who will love it and to institutions that will put it in context. Those of us who write and publish can write about David and really keep those things in mind. Those of us who write and don't publish can write memoirs of our time with David and send them to Max and Sarah, because I think it really is important that at this point we sort of assemble a kind of memorial to him for the future. And certainly for those of us who are teachers in academia, we absolutely want our students to learn about his work, to learn about it as artists, but also to learn to write about it as well. The wonderful thing about works of visual art is that even though when the artist is gone, we think of the artist in the past tense, the work always exists in the present. And I think that all of us who loved David can really help to bring that work into the future. Thank you.
Conspiracy theories. Relatively speaking, I'm a newer friend of David's, having been introduced to him nearly 20 years ago by our mutual friend, Luke Cohen. That places me roughly post-year of reading Proust, but pre-Vichesh in terms of organizing topics, obsessions, and loves of David Schorr. There's so many Davids to remember. The consummate storyteller, fearlessly narrating in English, and somewhat hazy and less confidently in Italian. The fearsome shusher of candy wrapper crinkling concertgoers who, after being berated up and down, often looked as though they'd survived a hurricane if they weren't simply left in a puddle of tears. The best cook ever of Thanksgiving, who for nearly 2 decades fed me, Burns, Amy, Steve, and the entire staff of 40 West 86th Street with perfect turkey fixing into sweet potatoes. The fretful hypochondriac, who, on being told in jest by our friend Lou, a doctor, that the mosquito he'd swatted to death was indeed a West Nile mosquito, raged, stormed off, and then refused to speak to us for hours. The ribald joke teller, the lover of old ladies, big hats, silver foxes, bow ties, golden gemstones, gossip, and gentlemen's buttocks. The man who could go misty-eyed and sigh, "Ah, Barcelona, the arm-hair capital of the world." The avid reader who disdained short stories and novellas, the film lover who couldn't be paid to see a documentary, the lover of food but the hater of restaurants, or one who couldn't let a waiter or waitress go without a tale or two, the fast walker, the night owl, the Times obituary fan, the master of the Lindy Hop, the relentless pursuer of celebrities, many of whom eventually, and probably not without some exhaustion, caved and actually became genuine friends. The bronzed beachgoer who choreographed a day at the shore like General MacArthur. The punster who relished poetry and wordplay, but wouldn't bother with a crossword. The telephone headset wearer, like a call center employee, so he could handle the endless flood of calls with friends, colleagues, students, airline bookers, and beleaguered customer service representatives. The unrepentant schnorrer, no bargain went unappreciated, no freebie went uncelebrated. Genuinely gullible and easy to prank, earnest, first to laugh or cry. The opera lover whose passion petered out a bit after Rosencavalier. The recital goer, the lusty connoisseur of the dirtiest pictures. The printmaker, the painter, the collector of scrimshaw, spectacles, textile, apothecary jars, antique toys, bow ties, buttons, shoes. My parents stayed at his apartment once while David was off at Gull and Cape Cod. Meeting them for dinner after they'd settled in, my mother said, "I couldn't find a place to put my makeup bag," and my father noted, "There are penises everywhere." Speaking of my parents, I hail from an academic family and have the distinct pleasure of being able to observe the life of the academy without actually having to live it. My 83-year-old mother, and most fearsome variety of academic faculty wife, on hearing of David's passing said, "You know, he was so wonderful and really the last person I've met in my life that I genuinely wanted to know." It's true. And the David I want to remember most today is David the teacher. He was a teacher of an older, more humane and generous school, driven by insatiable curiosity, not ideology, an explorer. A professor not just of art, but of all arts, music, literature, history, He was a generous thinker who looked at the world with endless interest and wanted to make sure his students, his friends, and his lovers also looked closely and thought deeply. His brand of intellectualism was shot through with an abiding belief that art could and should make us better people, and was tempered by a sweet golden sentimentality that didn't disdain tears or deep laughter. He was actually not never teaching, and understood that a great teacher must be completely open to experience. He was always attuned to new experiences, the thrill of new cities and new friends, long after most people turn in their passports and cease to bother building a community. He was a keen traveler, both of the external world and of the internal one as well. No one looked so deeply into their own heart. No one quite fell in love like David. Love overwhelmed him and often everyone within 20 feet of him. I think now, too, that his deep grief at Mark's passing was yet another exploration of age, of loss, of passage, and of endings. So it's as a teacher that I remember David the most. And he was that special teacher that you adore, and because of that adoration, you always make sure to present your best self. You want to make sure the story is funnier, the observation keener, and the fact more compelling. We were all, in a way, students engaged with endless dialogues with the good professor. It was this chemistry, or is it alchemy, that made our friendships with David so special. It goes without saying that I'll miss David, but selfishly, I'll also miss the Earl I was able to conjure up for David, too. Thank you.
My name is Douglas, and I met David in 1984. In Rome, he was on sabbatical, and I didn't realize at that time that I had met my Auntie May. But that's what it was. And he colored my life in a way that even I didn't realize until when he was stricken in Bologna, where he was working and teaching. I had the opportunity to go and be at his bedside. And he was in a coma, more or less, depending on how you define it. And I thought, well, each day I'll go a couple times a day with the blessings of his family and see if I could draw him out. And I would spray some of his cologne. I stayed in his apartment on a piece of cloth that he had probably stolen from India, and which you have all seen in his paintings. And I would waft it under his nose, and I would text with his friends and say, well, what do you think his favorite piece of music was? And I would proceed to play that into his ear. Now, this room had 6 or 7 people in beds and 10 or 12 nurses at all times. So it ended up being sort of a command performance for everybody. And in fact, one of the nurses said, I think you've woken this person up instead. And I sang to him, and I read poetry to him, and I read a book that he wrote with his brother to him, and it was an incredible opportunity to adjust to what would perhaps be David's passing, but also to the breadth and scale of our time together. He was an extraordinary person who taught me extraordinary things, and he stood for a great deal in my life, as I think for many of us. In an effort to, he loved nothing more than being backstage, and part of my career is as a performer, and he was always backstage with me. Can I come tonight? I said, David, you've seen the show. He said, oh, I'm not going to see the show. I just want to come backstage. And after the show, I'd be coming out of my dressing room, and he would have cornered the leading lady, or the leading man, or a handsome chorus guy, and he would be bobbing and weaving, and I knew he was telling a story. And we would go out and get a hamburger. His favorite thing was to have a hamburger, or we'd go the next day to our favorite place, Barney Greengrass, and he would regale me with stories. And then I said this, and then she did this, and wasn't it wonderful? And I love when she sings this note. And I said, you're really enjoying this. He said, are you kidding? I'm having the time of your life. And it was a pleasure. And after my folks died, there was no one I liked calling one and saying, David, guess what? I'm going to do X or Y. And he said, well, you must come over. I have to play you this recording, and this recording, and this recording. Don't imitate Robert Preston, but you've got to know his version. He had a prodigious memory, which you guys probably all know. He was the only person I ever met that he could do the intro of The Music Man and We Got Trouble by heart and race through it as though it was printed on the inside of his skull somewhere. It was just remarkable. And then he, of course, offer a poem of Cicero, and I would just be like, you're such a show-off. And then he'd say, don't have anything to eat. I made bolognese. You know my bolognese is it. He wrote me a text, email, the night before he had his episode that put him in the hospital. And I just thought it was an extraordinary release for him. But it acts as a release for me. I've shared it with a couple of people and I think they've all found it relaxing about his leaving us. So on March 29th, he wrote, my darling friend, I don't know how to say what I want to say. And in fact, not even sure what it is I want to say. Do, capital D-O, do you know the song Crazy World from Victor Victoria? I've always loved that song. And when I hear Julie Andrews' voice to this day, I always picture opening your dressing room door, and there she was. Anyway, one of the concerts I missed in New York was the mezzo Anna Bonaticelli, which got a wonderful review, only to discover that she's singing here in Bologna. So I went to Amazon to see what albums she had, and she just released a new one of Pants Rolls, Cherubino, Octavian, etc. And she sings Crazy World with an Italian accent. It's so sweet. So I went to Amazon, and of course I bought it, and the last line, oh, how I love this crazy world, has just been in my head. And for the first time since my brother died, I found myself singing in the streets today as I walked, to the probable dismay of the rather stiff bolognese. Anyway, somehow related to this was seeing you yesterday. We had FaceTimed. And the way that Jeffrey, my partner, just strode forward into the room like a little vision. And that fantastic painting, all caps, 6 exclamation points, that fantastic painting. I mean, I really think it's marvelous and by far the best thing in your collection. Judging from afar. And worthy of your growing taste in art and the pleasure it gives you. And you simply must buy it. And I thought, that's my friend Douglas, and how much you mean to me. And that you're happy with cuttlefish, and you can buy a painting that great, and maybe you guys will hop over to see me. But just, it's hard to explain, and it's a little tied to going to the Seder tomorrow. And that I was able to teach these Italian kids really well in my bad Italian, and made me realize how much I love teaching, and how good I am at it. And well, it just seems life is sweet again. And I once again realized how much I love this crazy world. That's all. Love, DS. David was a great lover of the American songbook. So I'm going to sing first and then you guys sing with me. Everything went wrong, and the whole day long, I feel so blue.
For the longest while, I'd forget to smile. Then I found you. Now that my blue days have passed, now that I've found you at last, I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true, always. When the things you planned need a helping hand, I will understand. Always, always. Days may not be fair, always. That's when I'll be there, always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. Okay, now everybody. I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true, always. When the things you plan need a helping hand, I will understand. Always, always. Days may not be fair, always. That's when I'll be there, always. Not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. Stick around, David. We'll all be talking to you. I hope you guys will all join us in the lobby here to lift a glass of bubbles and exchange stories that I'm sure these have conjured up, like the famous, "You want bread? Fuck a baker." Credit where credit's due. This beautiful fold-out that so captures David was created by Amy Bernstein, which she didn't want to say. And Phyllis really organized this whole event, and I just want to say thank you to Phyllis for taking this on. It's an extraordinary thing. And thank you, Marian, David's close friend, gallery owner, gallery representative, and the fearsome estrogen-packed triumvirate of these three ladies have brought us to this day. Enjoy, I'll see you in the lobby.